You're listening to CopyChief Radio. Get all the episodes and join the community at CopyChief.com.
What is up, friends? It's Kev. I am glad you are here today because, what can I say? John Carlton literally needs no introduction. If you know of me, you know of John, and you probably know of me because of John. I talked endlessly about the influence John's had in my life. First, as my copywriting hero, who I stalked his work all I could before I finally met him. And then he ironically told me the day I met him, he's releasing a course with everything I'd been trying to cobble together for the previous 2 or 3 years, the simple writing system, which I had the honor of coaching for 6 or 7 sessions with my other heroes in the business, like David Deutsch and David Garfinkel. And
you were an original coach.
I was the original coach, Lori Morgan, and lifelong friends. But John, I say this all the time. They say don't meet your heroes. You've been nothing but more impressive as a person than even as a craftsman. The fact that my family knows you, you're an entity in our lives, in our household. Everybody has their bad John Carlton impression. There are certain times when things happen when only a little Johnism is the only appropriate response. So I just want to thank you once again. And I'll remind people of 2 things. Number 1, John is writing, is active, and is still an incredibly unique voice in our industry. If you go to john-carlton.com, that's where you can get his updated free report. 11 really stupid blunders you're making in your biz and career. And you would expect no other title from a guy like John. And so if you want to figure out why you're stuck, why things aren't moving like they should, very likely covered in there. And I also have to mention that John and I did, as we jokingly call, the worst marketed podcast in history. It's about 34 episodes of us rapping, and essentially I always refer to it as me interviewing John's brain. And that is called Psych Insights for Modern Marketers. It is at pi4mm.com. Again, shocking that didn't catch fire with that kind of URL. But
I insisted on that URL, by the way. So.
It's a great podcast. It's a hidden gem. And John, I meet so many people now who that podcast was their way in to this world. Guys like Daniel Throssell and people who are doing interesting, original stuff always tell me I listen to those over and over and over again. What are your recollections of those?
I didn't know we did 34. That was a lot more than I thought. And I knew that, always looked forward to them. It's just sitting down, you and me talking, except, we weren't having a beer. So we were online and just going deep on stuff. It's like guys like you and me and Halbert and all the guys we hang out with in the Gonk, which is the Algonquin Group, the secret group of high-end copywriters that we hang out with online. Yeah, it doesn't take much to get somebody going. I've always said the best place to be at an event is at the bar after the event shuts down for the evening, because that's where you'll find the copywriters and the guys. And if you're lucky, you can be nearby and they'll have a drink or 2 and they'll start telling stories. And it's hilarious. It's alarming. But the biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone who wants to be a top copywriter is get a freaking life. Get out there and do things and make mistakes and blunders. And when copywriters get together and start shucking and jiving, they don't talk about their successes. They talk about their blunders. That's the stuff we remember. I like to say, I only know how to do a lot of things in business because I made every mistake I could make. My only regret is that I didn't make more mistakes. I didn't make all the mistakes I could have made. There were things I didn't know that were going on that I didn't try, but I failed in direct mail and in print and online, and I did stuff, but it's because I was always stretching, and I never saw a defeat as a final word on the thing. It's just you say, oh, this just identified I'm a little substandard in something. I need more information, I need more skills, I need more connection, I need more something. So you fix that, then you climb back in the ring, you do it again. You don't get your nose bloodied that time. That's how you learn stuff. But on the, even besides that, the copywriters that rise to the top are bigger than life because they chew up huge chunks of scenery. They really go after it. They love life. They love people, even if they're introverts, and they hate people, but they love them. It's a love-hate relationship for most of the introverts in the biz. But you just do things. And when you do things, when you get out there, when you're exposing yourself to this great, wonderful, scary, terrifying world that we live in, things happen and you learn stuff. And those lessons you learn get carried into your copy. They get carried into your life, the hot seats, everything. And as you know, because you've been in so many hot seat sessions with me and you've done your own, often the reason that the high-end guys can do the hot seat so well is that they zero in on the essence of the human element of whatever's going on. And sometimes the problem isn't, my website's not bringing in enough sales. Okay, that's a good place to start. But when we get down to it, how's your life? How's your relationships? How's your network? What's going on? And a lot of times the problem behind the sales problem is a human problem behind that. Maybe you got somebody embezzling from you. I can't tell you how many people I've known, colleagues I've had through the years who just out of nowhere, the guy they trusted the most wound up being an embezzler. Business can be scary and wild, but it's what we chose. Most of us, you and me for sure, we're unemployable in the real world. Right. I got fired from most of my jobs. In fact, almost every job I had. It might be every job I ever had. I either got fired or I kind of sneakily resigned, right before the axe
forced the firing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it still didn't mean that, I got fired from all my jobs. I guess I'll be a freelance copywriter. No, that's not how it works. I mean, I started, looking around, what am I going to do next? And I tried freelancing and, knew nothing about it. I had never met a freelance writer before. There was no rule book. There weren't very many freelancers out there. And then I happened to be in LA and around there, and I met Jay Abraham. And through Jay's divorce party, I met Gary Halbert, and he was this arrogant, narcissistic, wild man. And I liked him immediately. We hit it off. And, I had a 5-year adventure working with him really closely. And we became best friends. And, I was his close friend until the day he died. That doesn't happen when you're meek and you're hiding. And I'm an introvert's introvert. So are you, Kevin. And you climbed on stage and did comedy that people hadn't heard before. And you had no idea what kind of response you were going to get. And it's like I joke with my other introvert friends that the shutdown we had with the pandemic, it was the best time of my life. I mean, I didn't have to deal with people. I got to hang out in my man cave here in the house and just exist on another realm. It's not that I can't wait for the next one, but it was sure nice, not being a bad guy for not wanting to go.
You didn't get invited to one thing for 2 years. I mean, how great is that, right? You didn't have to make up an excuse.
Actually, I did get invited by a few things, but it was funny how the shutdown just wreaked havoc in our community. I mean, masterminds shut down, live events went dormant. God bless you for putting on your event again, and there will be a few that will last. I'm sure yours will be one of them. But, it's a different game. People are not wanting to go back to work. They don't want to spend the money to go fly somewhere and do something. Big mistake, by the way, especially if you're in a formative part of your career, to not get on a plane, go and stay in a hotel, pack up, take your act on the road and get out there. Because like I said, you can't go to the bar after the speeches and the rigmarole, afterwards to rub elbows with people and make connections. All of the connections I made were because I got on the speaking circuit back in 2001. Just started meeting people and then it all built from there. So
yeah, that's, I think the theme is, you always say, live with gusto. I always say it's such a courageous choice to go into freelancing. Think of all the elements that are foreign to anybody. The people around you think you're crazy and are secretly praying for you to fail so they can feel safer in their choices, right?
Your family hates you.
You have to be your own boss. It's risky. It's uncertain. And I would say the requirement for succeeding is, and then I quote you, and it's to live with gusto. Yeah. To do exactly what you're saying is to say, well, I don't get to just open up the laptop and call that my work. If you're really trying to grow a business and, like you said, understand people, you got to not only understand the people who might be the buyers you're writing to, but the people who are good at talking to those people. And I always say about the bar and the time of the event, just being around the people that you are doing at a high level the thing you hope to do, you start to piece together little clues. What makes them laugh? What do they choose to talk about or ignore? Those are the kinds of things you go, wow, these people think and act differently than I do.
Yeah. Also, the fact that top copywriters and even marketers too are storytellers. I don't know what it is about our biz, but you don't seem to get anywhere if you can't tell a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what gave you a leg up on it. You know, comedy is essentially storytelling, or at least American comedy is. American and British. Yeah. It's a competition among, you know, when you get some writers live and they sit down, it's competition to who's going to be funny. And I keep remembering that one of the times I went to your event and we went to dinner at a steakhouse, and I had just become a vegan that afternoon. So I was 6 hours into being by Saturday, you know, and decided to have my first big meal at a steakhouse. But, you know, I was at one end of the table, you're at the other end of the table, and our end of the table was wild. We had Laura Belgray down there and some other people, and we were laughing, and you were trying, and people were asking you serious questions on the other end. And you were trying to maintain. I know you wanted to be on our end of the table, but it was. And then we got in, you had a second table in the other room. You remember this?
Yeah.
And I got everybody to march over and look at how their table was doing. They weren't having much more fun. So, you know, so then they got all FOMO about not being at our table. So there's no holding the storytellers back. I mean, the only thing you can do is embarrass them or put them in a situation where they don't feel safe if they tell stories, because they don't know if they can swear, they don't know how it's going to be received. And there's, you know, people in there, the Karens and the Chads that, well, you know, that's not very dignified. Please, we're in a public place, you know, and the world isn't even divided evenly. It's like here's the world, which is caught up in their own shit, and they're just grinding it out. And then there's that little bunch of people who are trying to have fun. Despite everything else going on, there may be health problems, or maybe business problems, money problems, all this stuff going on, still get a laugh. The thing that Halbert and I bonded over that our other colleagues really, you know, didn't, was the need for belly laughs all the time. You want to get in that situation, you're laughing so hard you can't talk, you can barely breathe. And he's gone. A lot of my other colleagues are gone, and a lot of other people are stepping up. So it's kind of interesting. When I started out, I was the young punk at the table whose job was to make the old fuckers uncomfortable. And, you know, Halbert and I would get ushered behind the doors at businesses. We were in the secret back rooms, you know, with the movers and shakers of industry. And we just didn't take it seriously. And some of them resented us, and we never worked with those people. Other people were just in awe. It was like, how can you guys be so relaxed about this stuff? We're talking about making money here, you know? Yeah, we'll make you money, but we're not going to put up with bullshit doing it.
Right.
It was a great position to be in, because we knew we had the answer. We did hot seats, and we invented hot seats. The first event that Halbert and I co-sponsored with him, we had Jay Abraham there, and it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing for an ungodly amount of money back in '88, I think. And in the elevator after the first day, I asked Gary, I forget, what are we doing tomorrow? He says, I haven't got a clue. I only figured out the first day of this event. So we had no idea what we're going to do. So halfway through the next day, Jay had actually been experimenting with this, pulling people out of the audience and asking them, what's your problem? So we said, let's just do that. We'll call it hot seats. And we did. And we just started plucking, and that became the most popular thing we do. And then we started giving hot seat seminars where, you know, especially down in Key West, where just everybody came and everybody got their moment in the sun. They'd come up and sit on the hot seat and say, here's my problem, or here's my situation. And we'd go do it. The thing was, though, is that there was a little bit of theater there, because Before they were finished describing their problem, we were pretty sure we could solve it in about 5 minutes, but we couldn't do that. Those were too short and they wouldn't think they got their money's worth. So we had a little bit of theater. We'd have people from the audience, give suggestions and do stuff. And it was fun. It was like a little marketing circus. And we tried to get everybody to laugh. And it was frustrating, but it was, I don't know, it was just so interesting. It was like imagine having a comedy club where you went and you had to interact with people. One of the things I did on stage that no one else I knew did was I would just interact with the audience. I'd pick somebody out of the audience if I thought they were on their phone or doing something, and I'd confront them and I'd talk to them. I'd ask somebody else, why didn't you laugh at that joke? Or why did you laugh at that thing? And I wasn't afraid of doing that because, they're just people. Right. It's just, it's shucking and jiving. I used to grill you about how to deal with hecklers and stuff. I never really had any hecklers. I was able to put hecklers down, or the equivalent of it. People who wanted to just argue. It's like that's pretty easy in marketing. But imagine if you went into a club and you had to interact with everybody. I know a lot of comics don't like to do that, even though they're talking at the audience and they'll maybe point somebody out. But some of them thrive on that interaction.
Crowd work, yeah. There's a guy I really enjoyed over the last couple of years, Andrew Schultz. Did you see his special?
I think I might have. I've seen some stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, look for his special. He did an interesting thing. He got a sponsor and did it live. And then he would cut into these sort of cheesy commercials in the middle of it, which was an interesting marketing take. But what I noticed because that was my first exposure to him, watching his full special. And he did a brilliant job. You could tell he did a lot of crowd work in the clubs around town. And he just would mix it perfectly. The minute he would come out of like a long bit, he would just launch into somebody in the crowd. And you could tell there was theater there too. Like, it's so easy to make it feel spontaneous because he says to the woman, Latina, and she says something back. And the joke's about a Latina woman, but it feels like it's about her because he asked her, is this your boyfriend? Is this your husband? And that is comedy too. But that's the same as the structured joke in the idea that you go up with an idea, but it's always best when something unexpected happens. Same with if you're working on a big hunk and you're trying to perfect every word, there is a heckle or there's a moment or there's a thought you would only get with that energy of a live crowd right there, that you take it another direction, or you forget a part and you skip to almost another whole joke and you're like, oh my God, that actually works better there. It's that whole thing of you can only develop that material on a stage in front of a crowd. And I think the other thing that does is when you're on a stage with a microphone in your hand, there's other people hanging on your every word. That's when you find out the true depth of somebody's experience and verve, right? And so what you and Halbert were doing was not only putting on, I'm sure you said things in hot seats that you didn't even realize you knew yet.
No, absolutely. Yes.
Right? And you're like, oh man, I'm sounding brilliant right now, but you just got to act cool and go with it.
True. When you're writing copy, one of the things I used to say is you have to make your whatever copy you write, whether it's an email or an ad or a video, it has to be the best thing your prospect has seen that day. It has to wake him up because he's seen a lot of boring shit. He's slogging through the day, and you got to be that bright spot that he sits back and goes, wow. People talk about popping off the page, copy and doing stuff, but they don't quite understand that you're making it a live, visceral experience.
Right.
The best ads I've written, people have told me talked about how visceral it was. It got their blood going. They actually felt heat going up the back of their neck. In embarrassment or in a sense of, oh my God, I finally stumbled on it, or
anger, the nickel
anger,
letter.
Yeah, absolutely. Or that sense, the one I always strive for was that sense of the adventure is about to begin. It's like, I can't put this down. I don't have time to read all of this or watch this video, but my life demands that I finish this and go to this thing right now and see what's going to happen. Of course, and then when you apply the other stuff, take away the risk or reverse the risk and do all that stuff, you're just making it like the only decision he has left. Oh my God, of course I'm going to get this. Not obligated.
Already a yes, just go through tell me that, right. Give me the reassurances.
Right. But it's visceral. That's what I try to pound into writers' head. It's blood and guts, even though they're not looking at you, or maybe they are, but it's not live, but you are in the room with them because you're in their head.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. I've had this isn't original, but I hadn't thought about it this way before. Somebody asked me, well, what is copywriting? I say, here's what copywriting is. Copywriting is a two-sided conversation driven from one side. Kind of obvious. But if you think about the nuance to that, there's a skill in there that not a lot of people have and can be developed, but some people have it innately. And those are the ones who get really good really fast. And that is this: they can naturally anticipate what the reader will be thinking and experiencing as they're writing to them. And just like you said, the visceral part is if they feel like you're talking at them, there is no visceral. They might get angry about it, feel your rants, but it's not about them at that point. It's about this guy had a moment and it's like a spectacle. It's like a TMZ video. What we need them to do is be with us and feel us. And like, I'm having a conversation with this person and all I'm having to do is nod. And as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to say, hell yes. And I'm going to do that by pulling out my wallet and joining this thing. With your writing in particular, I think the thing that people miss a lot or marvel at and can't put their finger on is that instinct for making it a two-way conversation.
And I think one way to hone that is to have live conversations where you lose somebody. You're telling a story and they wander off and you never get to the punchline. Or you have a couple of people listening to you and suddenly you're too esoteric for them. You've just gone over their head. Or you went way past them, or you made assumptions on what they knew or would accept as fact, and you were wrong. Or the people you're dealing with are just much more stupid and clueless than you first thought. So that's why we talk about dumbing stuff down. You can still dumb stuff down. You can still use big words. You can still use highfalutin concepts. You can still do a lot of things that you do with people of high intelligence. But when you're dealing with the average person, you have to explain it. You have to help them feel like, yeah, I'm in this. I haven't used this part of my brain since high school. I haven't read a book, but this has ignited my critical thinking, and it's making me think. It's making me jump through hoops I haven't done in a long time. It's okay. You can dust off that equipment inside their head and have them go along right with you. Right. But you can lose them just as easily. You're making a dance. That's why I keep reminding people, Halbert used to say marketing is a numbers game. It's a percentage game also. It's like, if you think about it, your last big hit, what percentage of your list responded? And it's often 2%. So 98 people said, nah. And 2% said, hell yeah. And they got in there and you had a big hit with you. And if you're up in 5 and 10% of the list, then it's like you got a golden list. Right. So, you're not dealing with everybody, and people concentrate on the people they lose too much. You can learn from the people you lose, but you want to scoop up the easy stuff first. You want to gather around. And it's like being in a bar somewhere. There are people that don't drink, or they don't want to, you're too loud, you're laughing too much. A lot of people are uncomfortable around laughing. There was a couple of studies done. I think Harvard did the most famous one. They were trying to test, I think originally they were trying to see if they could tell the socioeconomic status of somebody by what they found funny. So they had a group of jokes, and they started, they would say what they thought was funny, then they'd back up and they'd find out from the person, what is your socioeconomic background, all this stuff. And, there weren't a lot of surprises. Fart jokes with kids, cruel jokes among the working class who are looking for somebody else to have it worse than they are, and the highfalutin stuff. But the surprise thing they found was how many people didn't have a sense of humor at all. When I read about this study, I was experimenting with some friends, because I had some friends I was fairly suspicious about. They were hanging out with us, they were laughing, they were right there and making jokes. But I noticed that a lot of their jokes were like skits from Bill Cosby albums and stuff. In fact, I knew one guy who had a photographic memory, and he used to, at parties, go off and you'd find him in somebody's bedroom with 3 or 4 women and a couple of guys, and he'd be reciting Bill Cosby routines and getting huge laughs and stuff. But I noticed that he always laughed just a beat after everyone else laughed to someone else's joke. What he was doing was waiting for social cues. And I think that's what the study found, was that people laughed and said they were funny, but they were always waiting for other people to laugh first, then they would laugh. But if you cornered them and said, what are you laughing at? Why was that funny? They couldn't tell you.
Right.
So huge part of the population has no sense of humor. That's why Claude Hopkins, I think, said people don't buy from clowns. You can be humorous in your writing and in your marketing. You can do that, but you can't, when it comes time to start dealing with the money, you got to get serious, because people are opening their wallet and they're getting in there. So you can still be funny. You can make them feel like they're part of this, they're at the funny table in the restaurant. And they're welcome, and it's fine, and their lives are going to be better for it. But you have to keep in mind, too, that you can't joke about spending money. So there's some value to knowing when it's inappropriate now to make jokes. Now we're getting serious.
I would say there's one exception to that, and this is new information to me because I've seen a guy do it. There's nuance to the humor, but the only time I've seen that work is with a personal list. And you're known for your humor, then you can get away with it. But you're talking about writing ads for other businesses, because this guy always says too, never try my style for a client ever. It will be completely inappropriate. But you're exactly right. And you and I've talked about in the past, the Thoreau quote, most men live quiet lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah, right.
I think that's one of the most jarring things. Ironically, I heard you say that I looked at all ads I read in sales copy from that lens forever, was you've got to be the thing that knocks somebody out of the zombie state, makes them sit up and lean in. Otherwise, you're not doing your job. And I can't not go to AI with that.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking the same thing.
Here's where I think we've arrived in this consciousness of life in AI with copywriting, is that people finally understand it is a tool and it cannot replace the things we're talking about. That
it has no soul.
Has no soul. It has no experience of, like you said, sitting across from somebody and seeing where they lost them. It's the savant at the party. It's way on the spectrum. As a social
really
human
good way
being.
to put it. It's not politically correct, and I don't think you can't go far with that explanation. But yes, it has access to a stunning amounts of information. It can't tell if that information is valid or invalid, accurate or inaccurate,
or appropriate for what it's trying to get across,
or appropriate for what it's doing. Now, I told you my experience with AI, didn't I? When ChatGPT first came out, I signed up and I had to do my obituary. And the first one was laughable. It had to be working for IBM and stuff. And I was just, I don't know where. So I was thinking, this is going to be easy to knock this shit down. But before I left, I thought, now let's try it again. So I tried it again. And in seconds, of course, it just came back and it was spot on.
Wow.
So it had corrected itself. And in fact, we're actually using some of that copy, not as an obituary, but as a who is John Carlton, changing it rather than who he was, who he is. Hopefully that'll last for a while. Stan's keeping the obituary thing in his back pocket for when I go. But, AI got it right. It was a somber recitation of things, because I think what it did is it went to my stuff on the web and rather than other stuff. There's a lot of John Carltons out there. So I don't care that much about AI as I care about flying cars, which, in the 1955 Mechanics Illustrated, as a kid, I was promised flying cars. And if I die before flying cars actually are a thing, I'm going to consider my entire life in this universe a complete failure. But AI, has, I read a lot of sci-fi. I grew up on sci-fi. I really like sci-fi. In fact, I feel comfortable enough to call it sci-fi instead of science fiction, and you'll get raked over the coals in certain corners of the world if you say sci-fi. But it's like Kennedy's quote, what is it? Some people look at the world and say, why? And I look at the world and say, why not? Or I look at, it was when he was trying to go to the moon. And it's like, if you can't think about things that don't exist right now, that aren't here, I think a lot of people were sucker punched by the seemingly sudden, it wasn't, but the seemingly sudden arrival of AI, when in fact, AI was already handling our phone calls and sending us junk mail and all kinds of stuff already. So AI is going to be a challenge for all. It's a disruption thing, much like the iPhone. A lot of people don't remember the disruption the iPhone caused. It was a computer in your pocket. And I had friends that say, why would you get an iPhone? Why do you need a computer? It's like, you understand, this is the internet. This is it's right here. And the iPhones are really small back then, if you remember. Some people saw it and just went, wow, this is great. And other people saw it and said, no, that is scary. I don't want to be involved with that. And it seems like we're just getting hit with these disruptions. My dad was, he's born in 1920. So he was born in the industrial age, was in World War II, and saw the birth of the atomic age. He saw the birth of the information age. And he, when in his 90s, he and I were hopping on Skype and having conversations. I would send him an email every week, and I just kind of write down what was going on. And he would print it out and read it like I had mailed it to him in an actual letter with a postage stamp, because that's what he liked. But he got it offline. And when we talked, on Skype, we talked for hours. He successfully navigated those things with no tools. He wasn't a techie. He was a construction worker, but he was open to this stuff. He wasn't scared of it. He was baffled by some of it, confused certainly by a lot of it. Heck, I got a new TV and my Roku stick keeps failing, so I can't get to my streaming services. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing. And then I stopped and think, no, it's not the worst thing in the world. Ukraine is battling the big bear beast. And you got to put things in perspective. But holy cow, what a world we live in now. And for AI will probably gobble up all of the lower end copywriting jobs out there. The starting freelance copywriting job will be as an editor. We'll be looking at and double checking things. Is it correct? How can we use this? Let me fix it up. This headline is bullshit. This is weak, so let me fix it up. But you can do this and you can whip these out. But if you're a businessman, you don't know anything about copy and written salesmanship, you just say, run me off a couple of AI emails and we'll send them out. Yeah, you're taking a big risk. Somebody better be watching what's going on, because what AI has commonly been seen to wander over to Nazi sites and start writing horrific, bigoted stuff without even knowing what it's doing. It just kind of got hooked into a dark corner of the web and started pulling info from it. Somebody has to keep an eye on this stuff. So the lower end jobs probably will be that. Yeah. You still, to be able to become a top writer, you still got to go through those early rookie stages. You can't skip that stage and decide, well, if I do editing for 5 years, I'm going to be able to step into an A-list copywriter position. And no, you can't do that. You go ahead and write the stuff. You can use AI as research and get it going, but learn your chops, learn the basics of the basic skill set. It's like learning how to hammer and saw first, and then build the house as you get more confident with those basic skills. So it's going to be a challenge. But for the mid-level and up for copywriters, and I've always said the top copywriters, you're really a consultant who also provides copy. A-list writers can use AI. Use it as a first draft. I mean, maybe it's a hit, maybe it's not, but the hook probably isn't there. You have to work, but it's a tool.
You certainly have to make it visceral, yeah. Look, I get it. I know there's so many communities, I'm doing air quotes, communities for entrepreneurs out there, all filled with their own version of overnight experts chirping at you from behind the screen. You got your Facebook groups, your Clubhouse rooms, just experts galore. How often do you feel like you're being pinballed around from thing to thing and picking up a little bit, a little piece there? How much of that is actually making it into your brain and your fingers and your business and affecting your money? How many of these people are actually out there in the field getting their hands dirty and testing to find out what actually works and what flops? Well, in the CopyChief community, a real community, you get shoulder to shoulder with the most active, successful marketers working in the trenches today, all while learning from industry legends who rarely teach anywhere else, if ever. CopyChief is an amazing community, super newbie friendly. Also, you'll find, elite level marketers and copywriters in there. They're all working to become the best at their craft, get paid top dollar for their skills, stay ahead of the competition by keeping their finger on the pulse of what's working now. That's the X factor when you're backed up by a community and you can get any question you have answered by people who actually
do this stuff and can tell you from real world experience what to do for your project, for your offer, for your funnel, for your clients, man, you're unstoppable when you've got that kind of confidence. Go check us out at copychief.com/join. If you've never been a member, you're going to see what you've been missing and you're going to say, where has this been all my life? And if you've been a member in the past, I would invite you to come and check out all the new stuff. We've completely updated all the tech. So we're on brand new platforms. Everything is slick and smooth and easy to access. And it's never been better. Copychief.com/join. I'll look for you inside.
For the first time, a big part of what I do is like placing copywriters or making, like connections. And I had a guy I hadn't talked to in a while, building a copy team. If he'd have come to me a year ago, he'd say, hey, I need a copy team. I need 2 seniors and 4 juniors. Okay, great. This time he came to me and he said, building a copy team. And we talked to him. And then he said, let me ask you a question. I just want your opinion. He's like, do you think I could hire a really good senior copywriter who was savvy with AI and eliminate the need for junior copywriters? And it was the first time I'd heard that question from somebody experienced and smart. And I was like, yeah, it is possible. It would take some steps you'd need to build frameworks and things. I wouldn't start with that goal. But over time, like you're saying, it absolutely is possible depending on what you need the junior to do. So let me ask you this, John. What does somebody do if they're coming into this industry? They're really eager to get their chops. You talk about the shameless horse stage, like all those things. How do they develop the skills to get beyond AI so that they can't be replaced by it?
So if I was going to be a rookie copywriter doing this stuff, I would learn to use AI. It's kind of like learning how to use a smartphone back in 2007, just kind of learn the ins and outs. If the client was pushing me time-wise or just didn't want to hear about it, wasn't savvy, and I had to work with non-savvy clients for years until I met Halbert and we started working with more and more savvy clients. Then my name got out there, then people came to me and I was able. But at first, you're dealing with people that don't understand direct response. They don't understand hardcore salesmanship. They don't understand hooks. Without a savvy copywriter somewhere in the mix, they're going to go out of business or they're going to get swallowed up by their competition who is savvy enough to at least bring in a writer who knows how to do salesmanship in print. But, go ahead and, ask AI to do X, write, do whatever it is, an email, a web page, do something, give it the input that the client has given you and have them do it. Look at it or don't look at it, but write your own version. If AI is your research tool, then you can take it, you can go through it. It's kind of like when they bring in a top writer at the publishing houses and have them write something for, say, it's an Agora type model, and there's a guru, a financial guru. He's got a history of stuff that's being written, unless he's a rookie himself. So if he says, so there will be other things you can look at, and you can look at what won last year, what won during the last recession. That's part of a smart writer's research. What have they tried? So that you don't have a big, brilliant idea that you come to them and they say, yeah, we tried that 6 months ago. It didn't work. That's an embarrassing moment. So you want to research and you do this stuff. AI just makes that simpler and you can do that, but write your own. Come up. The idea is to push for those hooks. Come up with your own hook, because you're going to be tested. When those guys mail, they always they don't just mail one piece. They don't say, this is great, and they'll mail that. They'll mail it against other pieces, either the current control or other tests. And you either win or you don't based on some very tight, I lost by a fraction of a percentage point, when I was working with Rodale sometimes. Sometimes I'd win by the same amount. Those companies, when the winner gets mailed and the loser goes on the shelf, and there's no two ways about it. So just keep writing yourself and copy stuff. And when you get a hold, the big thing that happened to me was I got an agent through Jay Abraham, actually. His name was John Finn. He was also an agent for Deutsch. And
I just talked to his son not long ago.
You did?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
John?
John Finn. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great guy. he was on everybody's list. And he would say, John, I got a bunch, like on a Monday, John, I got a bunch of mail today. And I knew what that meant. And he'd have a big bag in his office full of mail, junk mail, other people would call it, but it was promotions, especially from the financial field where I was starting to get a lot of work. And I'd go, and what the secret was I could hold up a piece by Ben Zavinga, a piece by Jim Rutz, a piece by an unknown writer, a couple other pieces. And it's like, wow, which one of these should I tear apart and study? And John knew which one worked because he had his hooks into the network. So I say, this is a control piece. Let's tear that apart and look at it. These two lost is not pay attention to that or read them, register them, but not try to study it. And I wind up with usually Gary Benzavinga's pieces, which was groundbreaking stuff back then in the mid 80s, last century. It's like, yeah, we had the steam wheel and we got a hold of a Gutenberg press. And,
remember cane pole fishing? Yeah.
Yeah. I got to tear apart a piece that worked, knowing that it worked. And it changed the way I looked at it. So AI can't do, well, maybe it can do that. If you gave AI, if you fed only winning pieces into the machine, somebody should try that. Because a lot of the times it goes bad is it has flawed source material. So if you only gave it certain kind of source material.
And that's the way it's headed. And that's what's interesting. I just think that we're getting better at analyzing. To me, the exciting thing about it is that you can build a framework for it to work from. The hard part is keeping it within that framework and not having it leap out into the universe to grab crazy. And again, comes down to the educated mind going, wait a minute, something doesn't look right. If I took your 3-volume collected letters, fed it into a framework of a knowledge base and said, it would do an amazing job of analyzing. My buddy Mike from swipe.co just built an analyzer that, I could take any one of your ads that he has on his site and AI would analyze what's going on. It's cool and it's helpful, especially for future generations. But at the same time, maybe I'm being nostalgic here. That's the work I did when I had no other resources and you were my guy. Mm-hmm. I sat there with a highlighter and a pen and I circled it. I think it's the critical thinking part about why did he do this here? What discovering it is slower, but if it's like anything like Google, I can want to remember, what was the thing with Marie Antoinette again? And Google tells me in 7 seconds. And I used to go to the library and go down a rabbit hole of encyclopedias and books and discover this whole world. And so it's the immediacy of this knowledge that scares me about people developing their own thoughts and process. Because as you alluded to, it's what the writer brings to it that will always be unique and irreplaceable. And if they don't go through a process of smashing their thumb with the hammer and realizing, okay, you don't hold it that way. And, I can hold 8 2x4s and get this wall put up faster instead of whatever. That's the badass on the construction lot who becomes the foreman and then gets to have his own building company. And you see what I mean? And that's what scares me is this like sort of the simmering dumbing down of the effort we need to put into our own education.
That's why I always tell writers to get a real thesaurus, for example. One of the more popular reports I used to send out was power words. I just went through a lot of my writing and maybe some of Gary's too, but I pull out phrases and words like especially action verbs. And I had only made the discovery when I started looking at this, but I'd done it unconsciously in my writing for 20 years before that. But I have a rule. I never use the same verb twice on a page. So if I have a 3-page manuscript that becomes a script for a video or a page of advertising somewhere, I consider a page was the equivalent of an 8x10, I guess, in Word. I won't repeat a verb on each page. So I can repeat it on page 2, but on page 1, I can't. And if it's at the end of page 1, I can't repeat it at the top of page 2. So that always forced me to look for different verbs because people can get caught up in the simple verbs. I got it. I have this. let me walk over to my library, my bookcase and see if I've got that. And use different verbs. So rather than walk, let me flounce over to my, or let me jet over there. It gets you thinking. But if you don't have a good vocabulary, and again, you don't want to go over people's heads, but top writers have a writing vocabulary and a speaking vocabulary and a thinking vocabulary. And the thinking vocabulary is very blunt and very basic. It's inside our head. Our speaking vocabulary is very, I use words in my writing I've never pronounced in a sentence before. Never used that word in a sentence because it's just odd. But in writing, it flows. It is the perfect choice. And my writing vocabulary is very, very pronounced. Until you get to that point, get a real thesaurus, not an online thesaurus, and don't ask Google for the synonyms, the antonyms, and things. Look for it because we call it happy accents. By looking for the word, how about go? Let's look for go and see what, and you'll see is half a page of synonyms and antonyms. And you'll also see what's above go, which is probably get. And then you'll see on the other page. And as you're going there, if you just go page by page, you're going, you'll see other words, and you're going through, and all this stuff is starting to become part of your DNA as you're going. So those happy accidents. And when you find a word that you like, make sure you hop to that page and see what the synonyms are for that. And suddenly you're building this arsenal of language for your writing language, or if you're writing a script, your language for other people or yourself to voice out. I mean, that's formidable stuff. Yeah. So it's part of communication. And I guess that's what this show is about, is communication, because, we started talking about networking with people and finding out how people think and how they act and what falls flat and what goes over really well, and storytelling. That's all about the human experience. So the Turing test, if I remember correctly, was you can communicate with a robot and you won't know if it's a bot or a human. I believe that's the Turing test. And we passed that a long time ago. So the next test would be something about emotional content. I'll bet it's out there. I just don't happen to know the name of it. But if you can't tell whether it's a human because of the emotional content that you're, there's a lot of pat answers a robot can give. You can say, if you're calling AT&T about a problem, I'm really frustrated. I'm getting very angry. And the bot can come back with, I'm sorry you're frustrated. Pick up the word, I'm sorry you're frustrated. Let me see if I can help, blah, 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 things like that. But sometimes the bots have got to come across somebody who says, I am really pissed off. And if I don't get an answer within a couple of minutes, I'm coming down there and blowing up that joint. And I'm not sure the bot has a response to that. Maybe they do. And maybe AT&T.
But a cop shows up at your door. Yeah.
Yeah. But, AT&T has screwed up so much with so many people. It's like Wells Fargo. Why would anybody bank with Wells Fargo? So I wonder if I can. No, I didn't say that. No. Wells Fargo is a fine.
Strike that from the record, please.
Yeah. There's an experiential and emotional content there that the bots can't have. They can't. What they might be able to do is find somewhere online where somebody is saying, here is my emotional take on this. And then they'll do this. And the bot may be able to recognize the word emotional and what an emotional thing is. But I don't think if you get a bot back it into an emotional corner, that it won't reveal itself as a bot.
Yeah. That's great. Okay.
My God.
I'll give you your
wrap up, aren't we?
We've done so many of these. I always know when you're about to go. Okay. You just hit this point where you're like, we've done it. It exhausted it. That's, again, that instinct of, if this conversation goes on longer, we're going to hit a point of no return. But here's what I want to ask.
Kevin, just wait. Kevin, just admit you got to pee.
I'm standing, man. Another thing you've done in your career that is unique, especially these days, right? And in America, certainly, is taking time away. Most people are too busy keeping score and counting their money. You said almost once a year or every so often, you would take not once a year, but you would take a year off. You went and played biker bars, and you just say things I always wanted to do, and I'm feeling burned out. A phrase you said to me that I may have repeated more than any of your other advice is that there is no promise that you come back from burnout.
Oh, yeah.
such a stunning statement, because when I say that to people, just like I did, they go, shit, that's true. I never thought of it that way. So you just took a year sabbatical. I guess I mostly want to know what surprised you the most about it.
It was kind of on the heels of the shutdown. I already had my man cave set up, and it was my thinking spot. And I went back there and did a lot of thinking and a lot of ruminating and a lot of reminiscing and a lot of trying to put things in perspective. I found out that I had emptied my bucket list. We all have a conscious or unconscious bucket list of things we want to do. Mine was completely empty, which is kind of a good thing. I did everything I set out to do when I was a younger man. But I wanted a new bucket list. So I had to think about what do I want in this bucket list? And it's not a new thing, but it was driven home to me when I was watching a Tony Robbins presentation. He was talking about the seasons of life. I think he didn't say it was his. He got it from someone else. But he was talking about what it meant to him. And it actually connected with me, because I'm in the winter of my life. Hopefully I'm in the early winter. I may be in the midwinter. Hell, I may drop dead at the end of this conversation. But I am at the end of the tracks and the trains turn around, because I don't think I'm going to go off on any more grand adventures. I don't feel that need. I may be forced to. And if I am, then I'll take whatever hand I'm dealt and I'll play it. But if I'm given the pleasure of living out my life with the things that I've set up for myself so that I have a comfortable way to go, I'm still going to be active. I'm still thinking. I still want to write. I want to do these things. But what does that mean? Where am I on this? I've been bouncing around with my autobiography. I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I got a pile of notes as high as a footstool, but I'm not sure that I can do it and release it. And what freed me, I kept having these revelations during the last year. And one of the revelations was, how about if I write the autobiography, just get all my stories down there and write it for my grandnephew, who I think will really profit from it. And I'll give it to him, have it arranged to have it given to him after I'm gone. Mm. That makes it the final word. Then it's like whatever story I tell, that's what happened. And I may write it with that attitude and release it anyway before I'm gone. But it's interesting to start thinking about your own mortality, the trip that you've had so far, what's left of the trip, what else you're going to do. You're in your 50s. So my 50s were my most active period. I was on the speaking tour. I wrote a monthly newsletter for 8 years. Created multiple courses, did different business things, and did all that. And then didn't really burn out, but got to a point where I didn't want to do a lot of those things anymore. I'd already done it. And I had gotten in the habit in my late 50s, early 60s of doing things too often. Back in the 90s, back in the 80s, I would do something, when I was taking 3 to 6 months off a year. In my mind, it was get out of Dodge. And Dodge was my work thing. So I had relationships with my clients that I could say, I'm going to be gone for 3 months. If you really need me for something, you can call me, but I'm not going to write anything for you. And they learned to accept that. And they got to experiment with a lot of other stuff, which always failed for them. So I'd come back and help, dig them out of the hole they were in. But at one point, I decided I needed 2 years off. And that's when I formed the 3-piece rock band, and we played all the biker bars in Nevada. And it was a blast. That's what I did mostly. Kept in touch with my clients and actually did a little bit of writing, but very, very small amount, and just lived a different lifestyle. I was living in Virginia City. It was a fantasy. People, no matter how much I tried to explain to them what they were going to experience when I took them up to Virginia City, which is one of the oldest towns in the West other than San Francisco, it paled in comparison to when I actually took them there and showed them the bars. And actually, I had a bass player, Mark, I would bring up to play with me. We play like a Halloween weekend up there. And first time he went up there, he was just wide. I was like, wow, this is like stepping into a sci-fi novel, kind of like the Old West. It was so great. And it was just the writers I took up there just sucked up the atmosphere and loved it. Because it was different, it was wild, it was balls to the wall. There was It was like nothing else I'd ever experienced. And that's what I've looked for a lot. But it became too much after a while. And I at the end of my 2 years, I still played, but I got back in biz. And I got back in biz with a almost unconscious vengeance, in that I knew in a couple of years, I wanted to have something big happen. And what happened was I got in a very good relationship. I've been with Michelle for over 25 years because I was single when I was in the band. That helped. I started the speaking tour and just started throwing myself into the biz. And I knew that with a monthly newsletter, I wasn't going to be able to take off 6 months at a time. So I made a conscious decision that for a while I'm going to do this. I think I might have done that a little too long. I think I'm just built for, 6-8 years was fine, but I did it for 12 years and even longer. And my body rebelled a little bit. I had some health issues. It was a learning experience. So the thing about burnout is huge. I didn't burn out and then go into my sabbatical. I went into the sabbatical wide-eyed, just thinking, I need to sit back and think, because I haven't thought. I think, I forget the year that Halbert died. Was it 2012? Actually, I can't remember.
Before that, because I was pretty new. I'm probably 5 or 6, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Because I didn't get to meet him. I met you in 2008, and I never met Gary. So that's...
Well, anyway, I still hadn't processed that, for example.
Yeah.
That was such a big hit. We also had some of our colleagues die during that time. Scott.
Scotty.
I hadn't taken time to process a lot of that. So that's something that I did. What I did was reconnect with my own humanity. I think as you age, people tend to freak out, especially in America. We're so vain and we're so caught up with ourselves, and we're the main character in our novels and all this shit. And we tend to forget, it's like you brought up Thoreau. Thoreau left society, went and lived by Walden Pond, and just ruminate on things, think about things, let it settle. And I think one thing that a lot of the top writers do is we think really well, we have critical skill sets, but we squander it on other people, on clients, on things like that, when really our first client has to be ourselves. And you're not being a sociopath, you're not being a narcissistic asshole. It's just you were given this meat suit and installed with a soul and a brain and critical thinking and all kinds of stuff. And for most of us, most of the people that I've met in business, you have a purpose. You all have a reason that you're here. And most of us are ignoring it or treating it lightly or, getting waylaid by other things. My second rule, it's my second rule of entrepreneurship, is the first rule is you get a simple, elegant idea, you take it to the marketplace and it works. And then it works for a while. And then after it's worked for a while, a year, half a year, 2 years, then you decide, I need to complicate the shit out of this thing. And that's when a lot of entrepreneurs fail. The simple, elegant idea gets shoveled way in the past, maybe because you have competition now that's doing what you're doing, or there's reasons, or the market change, or you have other ideas, but they often complicate things without thinking about what the consequences of that's going to be. When you make $500,000 a year, you can still do it as a one-man band with a couple of people supporting you. When you get up into a mill or something like that, you got to have a support team. You got to have a couple of secretaries. You got to have a full-time techie. You got to have a whole crew. And that complicates things. It's not just slightly different than what you're doing. It's a whole different ball game. So I was thinking about that a lot. And as I get old, I don't want that big crew. I have one marvelous woman working with me right now, Jane Thompson. She's, a real go-getter. She understands everything. She's learning how to understand me. And she's handling a lot of the stuff, frees me up for doing the winter stuff I need to do, which again is ruminating and thinking about things and processing, because I've got a lot. I got like 5 books waiting for me to finish here. They're just sitting. I just got to sit down and finish them, but I'm not getting to them for some reason. And I got to figure that out. So we all have the mysteries of life just always at us. As you see your kids grow, I know that you're very, very proud of your kids. You've done a really good job with them, but they also make you think, wow, they no longer need me when they get to that point. That's a shock. And then at some point, they're going to go off on their own adventure, their own life. They have to leave the nest. You can put it off, you can do a lot of things, but what happens to you when they leave the nest? You've been putting yourself second for so long with other people in your life, rightly so in a lot of cases. But when it becomes a habit, then you think, who am I without these other people or these other things that I have? And it's like, who are you? And that's the basic question of life. I think the Stoics came up with that originally back in ancient Greece. Can you answer the question, who are you? And most people can't. You can talk about, I have this job. I have these responsibilities. I do these things. But that's not you. Another person can do all that stuff. So what essentially are you? That's worth ruminating. A lot of my heroes have said versions of, what's the saying? Now I'm going to botch it. The only life worth living is the introspective life. There's some version of it. Or a life not considered is not worth, I forget what it was. Anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah.
So most people don't do that. They're afraid of it. They don't want to do it. They're scared of it. They're looking for leaders. They're looking for somebody to tell them what to do. And when you become a copywriter, you're a leader. You're actually leading the charge, the salesmanship charge. Businesses are nothing without copy. Copy is king, whether it's a bot or are you going to let a bot lead you? You're going to let a human being help you with, going where you want to go.
Another great thing you told me was you get paid the big bucks for making the hard calls.
Yeah. I got to hang out more with my old high school and college friends, which are the same age. They're just different groups of people. I love them to death, but they're not good at making decisions for the group. Whatever everybody wants, that's not how things work. Nothing gets done that way. Somebody's got to step up, and do stuff. And, I find I have to really bite my tongue sometimes to really put a brake on because around my colleagues, it's like hard charging is the name of the game. It's like not who's going to lead, but who's going to tell him he's not leading.
Exactly.
Who's going to put the harness on some of these guys, and those are battles that are worth experiencing too. So, but if you're a copywriter, you're a leader. You've got to understand what it takes. And it took me a long time to figure that because, again, as an introvert, I am not a natural leader, but I was kind of a stealth leader even as a kid. My cousins, who I grew up with, I had twin cousins. We had a blast. And I was talking with them at one of their kids' weddings. We were talking, and I was saying, God, we had fun doing this, that, the other thing, and it was just the three of us and my cousin David just stopped me and said, nah, it wasn't us. It was you, Don and Dave are my cousins. And they just said that we just sit back and wait for Carlton to come up with something. And then we go do it. And it was, it was always a blast or dangerous, We're
going to derail a train today.
Well, I derailed a train when I was about 6. Not proud of it, but I grew up right next to a train track. I mean, a train track was behind our fence in the backyard. No, the train track was about 100 feet or 150 feet from my bedroom window. The Southern Pacific came by twice. So the train, so we were out there. So one day we're out there where the train was stopped doing something. We asked about the cow catcher, what it did. And the guy says, yeah, the cow catcher can handle X number of railroad ties and knock them off and not have any trouble. So we thought about it. We put that plus one more the next day on the tracks. We're little kids. And the train just jumped the tracks a little bit. It had to stop and they had to bring out the thing and get it back on the tracks. But we thought, wow, we're kind of proud. But we're also kind of scared because, that was dangerous.
Could have been bad, yeah.
We had no idea. We didn't understand consequence. We were half feral anyway. How did I get off on that? I forget. But, back then as a kid, you're exploring, or you should be. You're exploring, and then as an adolescent, it's like you're getting into that. Who am I? I think the adolescents and old men are the ones that think about who am I the most.
It's interesting, right?
And the adolescent gets to try on different things and say, "Here's how I will be." I will be the rock star. I'll be the poet. I'll be whatever. And up through college and even into your late 20s, you can try on all kinds of different yous. And you're lucky enough because even if you make a mistake, you want to redo it. Other people around you are doing the same thing. They're remaking themselves all the time. As an old man, it's more like, that's the wrong question, but it's almost like, who was I? who have I been and who am I now?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to change. Your essence gets solidified in your late 20s, your 30s. And by the time you hit your 40s, you're in your stride. You should be, or even in your 30s. And in your 50s, you start ruminating, but you're getting shit done. And you're right on track for that. In your 60s, though, you start thinking, wow, it's a little harder to do the things.
Yeah.
I had pretty much a great 60s, but I had some health problems brought on by a lot of the shit I did when I was younger. Now that I'm in my 70s, the sabbatical essentially was helping me kind of put things together, come to terms with things, and think about the people who have passed on, and I'll be meeting soon somewhere, even as cosmic dust, out in some black hole out there in the galaxy. I am not afraid of mortality at all. And as Stan actually told me, he says, a sign of a life well lived. And I thought, wow, he's right. It's a badge of honor. You can't take anything away from me that I've done. And if I'm going to be arrogant about anything, it's that, by God, I had a bad hand dealt to me early in life, and I played it and then asked for another hand and another hand and another, and played every goddamn one of them. I urge everybody to do that. I don't care what your challenges are, what your situation is. There's always a way around a challenge or an obstacle. Do it your way. Be who you need to be, but do it. Don't spend a moment. Don't waste a second, being rueful about the hand you've been dealt. No matter how bad the hand is you've been dealt, other people have been dealt worse hands. That's why Helen Keller was so famous for so long. She was best friends with Mark Twain, for crying out loud, and could only speak through an associate. They do signs on their palms, and couldn't hear, couldn't see. Oh my God! And lived an amazing life. And it's like, are you going to say your situation is worse than Helen Keller's?
Yeah, and she could hang with maybe the greatest orator of his time. I mean, it isn't your limitations; it's your spirit, it's your character, it's your willingness.
That's right.
Man.
And in fact, I don't know anybody that was born with a silver spoon and a high IQ and, a soft bed to sleep in every night. I don't know anybody who's succeeded like that. Or the ones that have succeeded enough often are carrying the family business, or the family business is supporting them, or they had a leg up because of it. I talked to somebody, I said, aren't you worried? You spend all your money all the time. Aren't you worried? I said, nah, my folks have a lot of money. When they die, I'm going to get a huge inheritance. That's how you're going to live your life.
I feel bad. I honestly feel bad for that person. That's an AI running a business or a life. Like we talked, the comparison, right? They're not getting the privilege of having to do the reps. And so how are they going to answer, who am I? That's just beautiful. Sign of a life well lived. Joe, I don't know how we can top that. That was not the answer I expected, and just incredible. So much wisdom in that.
What did you expect? What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say manscaping is way more important than you ever realized. I hadn't looked in years. I don't know. I had to bring it back to the gutter so people know what it's like to have lunch with copywriters.
God, I miss you guys so much. I wish I was coming out there.
I do too, buddy. One little first class. What if I fly a first class?
Yeah. I'm a little burned. I won't lie. I got a little burned out in the last 10 years. The plague, my own health problems. I'm very healthy now. I don't intend to. My dad passed away at 96, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And I fully expect to get up there. So I've got some years left. But it's funny because I'm ticking down. It's like, I just wasted a day here. That's one of, I can count out the days I have. God damn it, that wasn't worth it. But then I look back and I never really waste a day. As long as if you have a single positive thought or an interesting idea or something, or if I hope everybody is keeping journals and keeping notes and stuff, because when you have those ideas, and keep it by the side of the bed, write it down, even if you got a stack of different size paper with different ink and stuff, and you have no idea what a lot of it's about, keep that shit, because that is that's how you keep score. That's the lineups and the gameplay as you're going along. I recently found a whole bunch of journals from the late 90s, which is as I was building up, I didn't realize what things were going to happen when I hit 50 and got on the speaking tour. But as I read it now, as an older man looking back on this, it was all leading up towards that. It was fascinating to read what I was thinking and what I was doing. And I had to make all these wrong turns. I was doing stuff. So I highly recommend keeping a daily journal. No one else gets to read it. Write the stuff that you would never let anybody else talk about, or you'd never talk to anyone else about openly. Keep it under lock and key. And when you look back on that, oh my God, you'll come up and you can't remember everything in your life. Yeah. And especially a lot of the brilliant ideas, they flutter away, so, and I started talking to you. Sorry, go ahead and wind it up.
Well, I tell you this, if for somehow.
Did you ever have an earring? Yeah,
two. Well, you see the hole?
Yeah. I just don't remember you.
No, I never had
a big hoop. Linda Ronstadt.
I always wonder, like, if maybe that's my 50s look. Just one, like a thick hoop. We did not long ago at a party. We stuck pins through them because me and my buddy both have had
and they're healing.
Not earrings for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It only took like a little bit of ice and some determination and my friend's wife's. Yeah. A little blood, but I could have an earring if you want. I will put in an earring if you'll come to Nashville. I will wear whatever earring you choose.
Ooh.
Come on now.
Chandelier.
If you needed an excuse to tell Michelle, now you have it. All right, pal. I love you. I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Yep. Love you too. That was fun. Make sure that people get over to my blog. I put a lot of work and effort over the years in that blog, and it's free.
It's
and
amazing.
The emails we send out each week, the email newsletter is free. It's my way of paying back. John-Carlton.com, because I couldn't get johncarlton.com, a goddamn woodworker in Boston.
That IBM asshole.
Yeah, from your hometown.
From Lowell?
No, I was actually in Boston, I think.
Boston. Okay. All right, pal. We'll do it again soon. Thanks, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/CopyChief Radio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. copychief.com/CCR.